just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out. From WBRNRadio and on the Boston Red Network, Friday Java, our weekly magazine program that we've been presenting for roughly the last 10 years. On the July the 6th, 2018, as we move in to July, the basic start of the summer months, July and August, months that many people take holidays or vacations, whatever you want to call it, and a time for some political reflection, but not very much. You'll have more of that in September, late September, and in October. And when you look at the polls, well, the polls are just out there. Now, some of the major topics spinning around the last 2 days. On the week that was, that'll be tomorrow night, we'll talk about the entire week and the events that shaped it. But the resignation of Pruitt, or was he fired? He was at the EPA. It doesn't really matter. The EPA policy is set, and the acting director had been a lobbyist for the coal industry. So that tells you the shape of the EPA. The struggle and the resistance goes on against the EPA, no doubt about that. And for voters that are concerned about the environment, that concern continues on. But as far as the annex of one Scott Pruitt, they were just simply that, the annex of one Scott Pruitt, playing to the monopoly media, how they handled it, how they didn't handle it, soundproof booths, shopping here, shopping there, working from home, all of those sorts of things would have done in many heads of department. It didn't do him in. He managed us to survive. And now that the midterm elections are a few months out, he had to go and serve. In other words, his usefulness to this administration. And at the same time, you see the Secretary of State, one that DJ Trump plucked from the Congress. He was a congressman from Kansas, Pompeo. Nonetheless, old Pompeo became the CIA director. Now he's the Secretary of State. What changes went into his title? Absolutely none. He's now in the Democratic Republic of Korea trying to come up with something that's palatable, some type of schedule. Various so-called plans were leaked to the usual suspects in the monopoly press. NBC got into the act. I believe ABC also got into the act. Did the New York Times get in? I'm not certain now, but they all carry the same thing, saying that the people in Democratic Republic of Korea had secret sites. They were developing their nuclear weapons program. Well, you have to ask a question about various nuclear weapons programs. There are many nations that have nuclear weapons, and they have programs, including the United States and the Russian Federation, China, etc., and they're all modifying or redefining their programs. So what's the big hoo-ha-ha about it? Well, there's nothing about it other than DJ Trump has made it the center of his quote-unquote adventure into foreign policy. Now next week, I believe it's next week, the summit in Vienna? Anyway, between DJ Trump and V.I. Putin will come off there, Geneva maybe it is. Anyway, that will be a photo op, basically. There was some machinations in the Washington Post about Syria, given that to V.I. Putin. Well, first of all, Syria was one of those no-win situations for the U.S. Had Hillary the Monster Clinton been elected, it would have been, quote-unquote, a big thing. They would have been in a nation building there. The elimination of President President Sadat, well, he was eliminated a long time ago, of President al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad. But that is a war, and their basic groups that they were sponsoring. And that's one thing to remember. These so-called Al-Qaeda or Islamic State, you don't hear that word in the news now because they've disappeared. But who was behind those groups? Well, it was the U.S. and the Mossad and various operations of that nature that they spent millions of dollars accomplishing absolutely nothing other than the destruction of the Syrian state, the uprooting of hundreds of thousands of people, the loss of life, etc. This is something you don't look at from an economist's point of view. What happened there was you were dropping munitions, various smart bombs, etc. But it cost millions of dollars. So it cost the U.S. millions of dollars to orchestrate this campaign of destruction, and at the same time, millions of dollars to participate. And there's still CIA-sponsored bandits in the area, etc. But they are eradicating those bandits from literally the face of the earth. And negotiations are going on in Afghanistan. And had not been for the U.S. involvement there in the so-called NATO operation, way out of date, that particular battlefield would have been cemented together into a peace program. And eventually it will. Well, then you go back and you ask these various operators there, General Cornpong and others there, how long, General, do you plan to stay in Afghanistan? You say, well, till it's secured. But you said that 20 years ago. It's not secured. What have you accomplished other than spend billions and billions of the American people's hard-earned dollars? Talking about tax cuts, you didn't need tax cuts if you hadn't literally thrown the money away. The Chinese premier talked about that. Xi talked about that also, where the U.S. has put much of their money into these adventures that are just basically hold. They do benefit parts of the economy, the military-industrial complex that I warned against as he was leaving office in the late 50s and late 50s, and when John F. Kennedy came in. But this just shows you how the nation has progressed and not progressed, period. And what you're seeing now from Pruitt on is robber baron, a capitalism that has not been seen since the 20s when the spigot was wide open. But we are in 2018, a different situation, a globalized economy. On Friday night, officially, these so-called tariff programs started against the Chinese products and some in the EU, etc., and across Canada. Long list of so-called tariffs that they're adding on. Now, it will take weeks and months to assess the economic damage done for these particular operations. The Chinese, for their part, have looked at this and they have factored into their growth, and they understand that they'll lose billions of yuans. Period. And what the U.S. will lose, well, it hasn't really been calculated very well. What we do see is certain agricultural products in areas of the country, Missouri, for instance, that have been suffering from lower commodity prices. They will just get lower. In the automobile supply chain will suffer. What will this add to the price of an automobile in the U.S.? Well, that price will be factored in, or to a beer can, etc. But this whole negotiating stratagem that the U.S. has of negotiating from quote-unquote strength doesn't work in a globalized economy. Yes, you do cause damage, but after a number of weeks and months, that becomes a normalized trade relationship. The shock waves are on, as Jesse Jackson would say, the front side, not the back side. And the Chinese understand this, that on the front side, yes, they will see less imports into the U.S., no doubt about that, but at the same time, less exports into China. And when you look at the other side of the coin, for instance, we'll look at AT&T very, very briefly. On Numbers Madison, that's our macroeconomics program, we'll have the latest report, jobs report, that'll be out later today from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. But back to AT&T, well, AT&T has further monopolized itself by buying up Warner. But if you look at Warner and where it used to be Time Warner, those various parts of it, many of those are old-style enterprises. We're talking about CNN, etc. They have to compete in a global economy, worldwide news, etc. And if you look at AT&T, their mobile business is just their mobile business. They still have to compete there for services. What have they done? They've added little extra things in to sort of, as they say, get by. That's a tenuous condition of some of these enterprises. And at the same time, there's China Mobile that they want to keep out of the U.S. Well, China Mobile no doubt will stay out of the U.S., but at the same time, Chinese travelers that are coming to the U.S. bring China Mobile with them into the U.S. So if you're going to have this global business arrangement, that will be a part of it. Now, if you start to exclude the Chinese from coming here, you just simply exclude the Chinese from coming here. The tourist dollars, student dollars, those are all dollars that the various enterprises from universities are making that they would not make. Because you're up in the U.S. against the demographics, particularly in university systems where there will be less so-called native-born students to attend these universities. And the increasing online nature of education. You have Concierge. You didn't have Concierge 10 years ago. And various other online education type courses. MIT has put their many of their lectures online. Other universities have done the same thing, and anyone anywhere in the world can watch these lectures and do the exercises. Now, they may or may not get a degree, but you see, in knowledge work, that doesn't matter as much. If you look in the Information Technology Agency, yes, people do have degrees in computer science, but not as many as you would assume. They have degrees in other things, or they do not have degrees, etc. So that is what you are seeing more and more. You have Uber out there, the gig economy. They are trying to literally get autonomous or self-driving cars as quickly as they can on the roads. So some of those are some of the things will affect many things, including Geico. Billionaire Buffett has recognized that that will come and have a drastic impact on the automobile insurance industry. So we're having those things ahead. This is one of the reasons that you see the DJ Trump type programs that going to places. We'll switch there to Great Falls, Montana. We'll ask Mary about that, but nonetheless, Great Falls. He was there, had an auditorium in Great Falls that would accommodate 6,000 or so. They turned some people away, and the people were not happy about being turned away. Thousands of people with tickets to attend the rally there in Great Falls were turned away on Thursday afternoon. This is from, incidentally, the Great Falls Tribune, which it appears is part of USA Today these days. Anyway, this is by Lee, it looks like Lee Vinning, and Kristen Liberty, and it's not very visible here. Get a little bit better stream going on here. Anyway, inside the Montana Expo Park, DJ Trump boasted about the size of the crowd. Well, you can book arenas like this all day, and it had 6,600 capacity arena, and he went on to mock various people. His Pocahontas liturgy there, period. Judy and Jason Tucker of Troy, and I have no idea where Troy is, and friends from Libby Grove, and friends from Libby drove 6 hours. Montana's a massive state. That's the northwest corner of Montana to see Trump, only to be kept outside the arena after more than 2 hours in line. They gave up on reaching the door at 4:30 with thousands ahead of them, and they were shocked that the tickets could have been oversold. We were hoping to see the president and hear him speak. This is what Judy Tucker said, adding that some didn't make it in the arena after 3 hours of waiting. I recall waiting to hear Bernie Sanders and didn't make it into arena. So that happens during the 2000 campaign. That was of G.W. Bush. Visit about 1,500 ticket holders, amongst them troops just back from Iraq. And most but not all of the Skyline school classes were shut out of the event when the fire marshal closed the doors. So nothing new there. The Tribune found a few of those disappointed folks gathered at the Mighty Mo Brewing Company downtown, but they were not angry about it. There was a couple from Helena. I guess Mary would be happy to hear about this. No, not very happy. Who drove to Great Falls, one who had brought her daughter and a friend for the experience of being in the same room with a sitting president.
Well. We brought my daughter. This is from Jennifer Steinman and her friend up here with us. They're high school students, and we thought it would be a good experience. Steinman, who doesn't follow politics, likes Trump because he speaks his mind. I like what he has to say. Anyway, I don't follow politics. I'm not interested in politics. This is from Neil Kuntz. But even if Trump wasn't the president, I would want to see him because he's such a controversial figure. He's not just your normal career politician. That's a lie, too, because now he's making a career out of politics. But that's kind of what I like about him. I think people should get off his back and give him a chance to do his job. Well, Anyway, there were protesters there outside of the Four Seasons Time to Lose 239 pounds. That's some of what we saw outside of the signs outside of the arena. Give the Donald four-walled prison. So there were protesters there. Trump is a racist and so forth. This man could be on war. Wait a minute. This war could be on the ballot box and various other things here. Montana loves John Tester. So these some of the things out here that there were protesters at the site. The media doesn't usually talk about them, but we just put that out for public consumption. From Russia with love. Inquiring minds want to know, etc. Trump isn't the Mein Führer. Okay. Don't drink Trump's Kool-Aid. And joke. Worst president ever. I love building bridges, not walls. Of some Tester supporters there. My husband is a Syrian immigrant who will be leaving the country shortly. So some of the things are going on here. The Montana Expo Park. This is what they came to Great Falls to see, and they show all these people standing out there. Suppose it wasn't very warm there. Smiling, make America great again. Well, I'll have to see about that particular one. Anyway, we'll leave nonetheless, need Montana, and go to Charlie Cook. Check on our time here. What Kennedy's retirement means for the midterms. This is Mr. Cook, one of the best, in our opinion, best handicappers in America. What are the electoral implications of Anthony Kennedy's announcement that he will retire from the court? With about a third fewer people voting in midterms than in presidential elections. Who vote and who stay home this November is especially important. On April the 10th, this column we noted, disparity between high levels of interest and passion amongst Democrats compared to Republicans answering the question. So what could turn this around? What could build Republican intensity and turn out to something compatible to what seems to be forming for the Democrats. This seems to be three possible things: guns, impeachment, and a Supreme Court vacancy. The column suggests so far this cycle that the gun issue animates the left and those who support gun control, and is not to ignite a symmetric fear amongst those who oppose additional gun laws. It's not obvious that a real fear amongst those who worry about gun rights has taken hold. This is a reversal from the pattern for decades when more Americans were pro-gun control, but the intensity on the anti-gun control side, led by the NRA, mass shootings at Parkland, Florida, and in Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Strip, and in San Bernardino, California, amongst other places, have shifted the balance. No doubt, students from Parkland have been touring on bus, registering young people to vote. The second possible trigger for an increased GOP energy was the impeachment issue. The more the word impeachment is used on cable news and the internet, the more it's a wake-up slumbering DJ Trump voters who have shown little interest in the midterm elections with their guy not on the ballot. Another possible spark for turnout, incendiary comments and actions made by some, notably representing Maxine Waters, who advocate public ostracism of certain people who work in the Trump administration. Never heard any more about that. Effectively creating a political apartheid. Mr. Cook's words are not my words. I guess each side has their own cable networks and internet sites. Maybe they'll eat in different restaurants too. Then the column noted that the third issue would be could animate conservative voters would be a Supreme Court vacancy. DJ Trump is working on that. Democrats are already motivated, and opening on the court might trigger corresponding stimulus with the right, since the court is composed of 4 liberal justices, 4 conservative justices, and 1 so-called swing voter. It doesn't matter too much politically which justice steps down. Any vacancy will trigger a warfare, but with not much ammo. Now, with Kennedy's retirement, the fight has begun. We are starting to hear terms like turbocharging, supercharging of the party's bases. If you believe Democrats already energized, there's more coming than this will engage the previously lethargistic Republicans. The closer this election will be, maybe and maybe not. The implications of the news are that both complete and uncertain. Some theorize the court's vacancy fight might make life more difficult for 5 Democratic senators in ruby red states, won by Trump by more than 19 votes. They've talked about this. The Sheriff Joe Donnelly in Indiana, Heidi Heidekant in North Dakota, Joe Meacham in West Virginia, Claire McCaskill, and John Tesler in Montana. While McCaskill and probably Tesler will stay in line with their parties, this pulls a lot of pressure on all 5, as they are in states where Trump and his agenda remain quite popular. But we see the Supreme Court fight breaking in different directions in 2 chambers. Keep in mind that competitive Senate seats this year are in a very different America, with large rural and small town populations. That Trump's popularity is greater than in the nation as a whole. House races are more in suburban districts, particularly middle and up-class areas where Trump is toxic. There's also a spirited debate over which side would benefit to be heard most by a pre-election vote. They're trying to do it right now. Stepping back from electoral implications, it's hard for a nonpartisan not to see this as a case for Democrats being forced to reap what they sow. The threshold of confronting all federal judgeships with 60 seats. The prevailing view was that the federal judiciary should be populated by nominees who drew a broad base of support. Then the simple majority but in Barack Obama's second term, on roll call votes of 242 on November 21st, 2013, Senate Democrats led by that was a vote on 242 by Senator Harry Reid, pushed through a rule change on the 52 to 48 vote, allowing nominees to pass with just a simple majority. All Democrats except three, Senator Meacham, Carl Levin, and Mark Pryor of Arkansas, voted to drop the simple requirement. So now we have it on the 6th of April 2017, after Democrats lost their Senate majority in the 2014 midterm elections, and after Trump replaced Obama in the White House, Mitch McConnell and his Republican colleagues simply extended the law threshold to the Supreme Court. Yet McConnell and Senate Republicans held U.S. Circuit Court Judge Merrick Garland hostage for the last year of the Obama presidency. McConnell's move last year enabled Republicans to shove through Neil Gorsuch, and maybe this will happen again. Always had Democrats not moved to change the rule back in 2013, but we'll never know. We do know Democrats deprived themselves of moral high ground by taking the first step. Things have certainly changed since the 1987 rejection of Robert Bork. Prior to then, Supreme Court nominees were pretty much only rejected on matters of ethics and lack of qualifications. That term is borking. This appears highly unlikely that Democrats can prevent another nominee from joining the Supreme Court. The real questions are just how conservative that person will be when that person will be sworn in. Republicans hold 51 seats, and there is uncertainty about John McCain's ability to come back and vote for a replacement. So this makes, again, Susan Collins, Bob Corker, who's retired, Jeff Flake, and Lisa Murkowski, she's from Alaska, incredibly important in the absence of Senator McCain. The GOP can't afford a single vote defection unless they can coax one of three Democrats, Donnelly, Meacham, and Heidi. This gives Republicans a hand, because Susan Collins, who Mary out in Montana doesn't trust, I don't trust her either, and Bob Corker and Jeff Flake have nothing to prove. They're resigning. And Lisa Murkowski is now, this is at 3-3-3. That'd be a very interesting situation if Lisa Murkowski and Bob Corker and Jeff Flake decided not to vote for someone, and now we have Kavanaugh, but some of the conservatives are religious nuts, are questioning him. So we just don't know. This is from the people at the Pew Center. I think we have time to get this one in, and then we'll do the sports. The share of teenagers with summer jobs have plummeted. This used to be a big source of income in our day since 2000. The type of work they do has shifted. They're not working in Mickey D's anymore in hamburger joints. As recent as the turn of the 21st century, roughly half of American teens could expect to spend at least part of their summer vacation lifeguarding, dishing up soft-served ice cream, selling T-shirts, or otherwise working. But the share of teenagers with summer jobs have tumbled since 2000. That'd be 18 years ago. Despite the recovery from the Depression, a third of teenagers, 35%, had a summer job last summer. To understand what happened, the American summer jobs, Pew Center looked at the average employment rate, known as the employment population ratio for 16 to 19-year-olds in June, July, and August, We use non-seasonally adjusted data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. For this analysis, teenagers' employment rises sharply during the summer months, typically peaking in July, where we are now, from the late 40s, which is so far back as far as the data goes, but generally fluctuating between 46%, the low in 1963, and 58%, the peak in 78. The pattern began to change in the 90s, 91 recession, for those that remember that one. When the teenage employment rate hovered around 50% for the entire decade of the 90s, teenage employment fell after the recession of 2001. That was the dot-com bubble burst. Well, no, excuse me, that was after the dot-com. That was G.W. Bush's. And then, of course, the Depression of 7 through 9. Only about 30% of teenagers had jobs in the summer of 2010 and 2011, and we're very lucky to have them. European teenagers are more likely to work over the summer than teenagers of other racial and ethnic backgrounds. That's why we used to have various job programs. I haven't heard of any this summer. Last year, for example, summer employment rate, 19 to 20-year-old Europeans was 37.3% versus 29.7%. For Latinos who are any race, 26.1%. For African Americans, 23.3% for Asians. In 2000, let's see, about 1.3 million more teenagers were employed in July of 2017 than in April. A rough gauge of summer job holding, 955,000 of those additional teenage workers are 74.1% were Europeans. And as we go on here, 2.1 million of the estimated 6.2 million teenagers who were employed in July, 33.8% worked in accommodations, food services, restaurants, hotels, and the like, compared with 1.9%, 22.6% in July of 2000. July, let's see, more teenagers last July than in 2000, span the total number of 16 and 19-year-olds. Now we have experience of less than 16 being the working age across the U.S., fell by 2.3 million, 27.4% overall. Accommodation food services added more than 2.3 million workers between July of 2000 and July of 2017, 19.6% growth there. Of modestly at least, the percentage terms was arts, entertainment, and recreation sectors include employees as sports team, museums, tourist sites, county fairs, performing arts groups. Last July, 8.7% of employed teenagers worked in this sector versus 7.5% in 2000, almost 20 years ago. Let me finish this up here. How does it look for teenagers heading into the summer? As of May, 29%, or 4.97 million were employed, and a lot of that's because of demographic shifts. Can't find adults. An estimated 737,000 were unemployed, meaning they were available and actively searching for work. Unemployment rate was, this is 16, 19-year-old, was 12.9%, not much different than the 12.6% in 2000. So in other words, that has remained about there. Mr. De Silva was the writer here. Even though there are more working age teens today than in 2000, Few of them are in the labor market force. 5.7 million as of last month, down from 8.1 million in 2000. Last month, around 11 million teens, 66% of the total non-institutional population were outside the labor force entirely versus 7.8% or 41% in May of 2000. So that basically that it has went up once more. The labor force, 5.7 million as of last month, down from 8.1 million. In other words, they're less. Last month, around 11 million teens, 66% of the total were outside the labor force entirely. And 7.8 million were in it in 2000. In 2000, that was 41%. So in other words, more and more teenagers, the takeaway there is, are outside of the labor force. Let's get to the sports and ESPN. Oops. We hope to get there. Nonetheless, we have Uruguay and Brazil. That will be the early game, and then France and Belgium. Today, this is at the FIFA World Cup. And the quarterfinal prediction, who will advance? I'll take a quick look at it. I'm not certain. This is ESPN. Uruguay, France, Brazil versus Belgium, Sweden versus England, Russia versus Croatia. The round of 16 is over, and which means there are 8 games left in the World Cup. 8 games, which to crown the predicted champion. The first game on Friday is Uruguay take on France, which means we'll get into that. Louis Sierra, anyway, not sure who they were. And then there's Belgium and Brazil. And to continue their adventures, no doubt about that. Saturday, day of all European quarterfinals, England and Sweden, who will win that game, and complete with Russia looking to continue their fairy tale situation with Croatia. So we'll see. And they didn't tell us who would win that either. So this is basically where we are. France and Brazil. Uruguay and France. Will France win? Will Brazil? Be of importance to many African countries with France. Brazil and Belgium. That is the America's contender. Sweden versus England. And then, of course, the host, Russia and Croatia. No doubt the crowd will be there for Russia, but can Croatia do it? We don't know. We make up no predictions. Nonetheless, on to baseball. The Marlins were in Washington. It was all Marlins for once. 14-12 was the final score. The Rangers and Tigers in the Motor City. The Rangers pulled that one out 7-6. Atlanta and the Brewers in Milwaukee. Brewers 7-2. The Orioles and the Twins in Minnesota. Twins 5-2. The White Sox and Astros in Houston. Astros 4-3. The Padres and D-backs in Arizona. Padres 6-3. The Angels and Mariners in Seattle. Mariners 4-1. And finally the Cardinals and Giants. A game we tuned into. It was all the Cardinals this time around. 11-2. The Cards had 18 hits, no errors, and the Giants 2 hits. Mr. Weber evidently pitched the whole game. He was a winner, and well, the talk on the St. Louis side was all about Dexter Fowler, who just returned from paternity leave. According to the manager there in St. Louis, Dexter had not been playing up to his ability. In other words, he was a slacker. And of course, Dexter has 3 more years, I believe, left on his contract. for $85 million. He was with the award-winning Cubbies in their World Series win. And he was a glue behind the Cubbies. And, of course, when the Cubbies lost Dexter, something has been amiss about the Cubs' offense. Now, Dexter has not been on his year this year, no doubt about it. What the situation is, well, we don't know. It'll all play out. We'll tell you more about that in future installments. Nonetheless, we'll be around here on many of these outlets, iHeart, Stitcher, etc. And I'm not sure we're on old Apple Tunes. I haven't even looked. Anyway, and various others there. We still incidentally have our broadcast at Blog Talk Radio. We hope that Blog Talk to do some live talk shows this summer. We'll get to it. Nonetheless, the week that was will appear. Numbers Man Macroeconomics Program. We'll be talking about the economy. How will the tariffs affect the economy? Early readings. But it's a little bit too early to get the total effect. We're not really in the quote-unquote Trump economy yet. There is always some lethargy, I guess is the word, between them. And will we have an open source report? Perhaps so. We'll try to have more open source reports. Another item that we'll be pushing is BR on the World. We had the election of in Mexico of Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. There was a live news conference today. We got a little bit of it from Mexico City with the president-elect, Lopez Obrador. We'll talk about that on the week that was, the implications of his election for Mexico. Also have a groping thing going on in Canada with the Prime Minister Trudeau. Have a good weekend, everyone. This has been a short week with the July 4th situation going on there. And we'll talk to you on the week that was.